From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Small Soldiers, released in 1998, starring Kristen Dunst, Gregory Smith, and David Cross. Directed by Joe Dante. The synopsis is, a toy factory, Hartman Play Systems, puts out a new line of toys, the Commando Elite, who fight against the Gargonites, which have been accidentally given military munition chips. All goes awry when a pre-released batch are dropped off at a young boy's family-owned toy store by the name of Alan. The story. The screenplay was written by Gavin Scott, Adam Rifkin, Ted Elliott, and Terry Rossio. Joe Dante was brought in to direct the film. Toy Story, released in 1995, is usually the first movie I always hear people compare Small Soldiers to. But to me, I feel like there's a stronger correlation with the storyline from Gremlins, released in 1984. Does anyone else see this? A boy gets a new plaything from an older man, and bad versions of this plaything destroy everything in their path. Not only that, the film is packed with many references to Gremlins 1984 woven into the plot. In this film, Alan is mainly responsible for activating the toys, as the main character in Gremlins, Billy Peltzer, was responsible for getting Gizmo wet and ultimately setting off a chain of events that would result in the Gremlins taking over his town. As with many of Joe Dante's films, there are many references to other films and pop culture, which could either come off as cute or an annoying cliche. I, however, loved it all. I love those silly dad jokes, those little silly pop culture jokes. I thought they were cute and funny. The scene where Chip Hazard addresses his troops and appears in front of a large American flag is a nod to the opening of the film Patton, released in 1970. The music being played during the scene where they turn all the Gwendy dolls into soldiers is the theme from the music in The Bride of Frankenstein, released in 1935. Ooh, I just love that movie. As well, the entire scene is inspired by Frankenstein, released in 1931. After one of the Commando Elite, Nick Nitro, shuts down, Chip Hazard says, his battery has run out, but his memory will keep going and going and going. And this is a direct reference to the Energizer batteries marketing slogan at the time. The movie borrows Terminator Vision, where we see the assessments and response choices from the AI's point of view. The film borrows from The Burbs, where the neighbors band together and end up surviving a night of explosions and shenanigans together. And this is another film directed by Joe Dante, featuring actors Wendy Scal. Dick Miller appears in this film and coincidentally drives a truck in all three movies, The Burbs, Gremlins, and Small Soldiers. There's a connection to Transformers, the TV series, where we have a battle between two robotic sides and we have human characters supporting the good guys. The film is filmed with every war movie trope and dialogue. About 90% of the dialogue is quotable from other movies, and some of them are maybe of a little bit of a mature nature, which met a conflict of interest for parents, allowing their kids to watch the film. And in spite of all of the mimicry and references to other films, Small Soldiers does have a few brand new elements that it introduces to the audience. The lore behind the Garganites, the fearsome-looking yet peaceful race of aliens searching for their home world. And it gives way for more world building with lots of potential. A book for the film was published in real life by Puffin Books by the name of Small Soldiers Top Secret Dossier from the files of Irwin Wayfair. Irwin is the creator of the Garganites, who works for Hartman Place Systems. This was Mayfair's private journal, which gave an insight to what went wrong at Hartman Place Systems. Then in the undercurrent of the plot, there is an ecological message, as we have the Garganites searching for the natural setting of the Gargan against the technical savvy commando elite that destroys without intelligence. And as well, we have the two neighbors at odds with one another, the satellite dish-loving Phil Thimple versus the tree-loving Stuart Abernathy, who is Alan's dad. Now the pacing. The pacing at 1 hour and 50 minutes is way too long. The beginning moves so slow, but it's to really set up many of the characters. And we have this kind of thing happening when we have a story with so many characters where you have to kind of detail the reason why all this trouble started in the first place. But by the last half of the film, it really picks up and you get a super action-packed finish. Now the challenge. The challenge in the film is at first the happenstance of a botched military X-1000 AI chip being implanted into action figures that are set to distribute worldwide. One simple shipment gets dropped off at Alan's toy shop and accidentally activated, in which we get a glimpse of the battle between a perceived good and evil. The twist is that the soldiers that fit the archetype of the American hero are not. They are actually the bad guys in the film. And you know what? These guys are not by nature evil. However, they are following a protocol, proceeding with incredibly violent means to destroy their perceived enemy. The commando elite are fun-loving soldiers at the core of it, doing a job. So there's a bit of comedy during their exploits. But make no mistake, they are an incredible threat to the story for both the Garganites and pretty much any human that the soldiers think are helping them. They are ruthless, cunning, and quite creative, especially with the designing of dangerous weapons and vehicles out of things found in your average tool shed. The leader of the commando elite is Chip Hazard. I mean, honestly, he's one of my favorite characters in the film. Actually, he is my favorite character in the film. He deserves a lot of special attention because of all of the commando elite. He is the one upholding the purpose for their creation to its highest level of obsession, even. There's a part in the film when he has the chance to bring to life a new army of commando elite from the toy plant, and he wisely doesn't bring any of his own action figures to life, so he doesn't have to be questioned on his command. He's very smart. And at the end of it, his ego really controls his actions, and that's what really makes him so much not a good guy. His ego takes him to the lengths of winning at almost any price. And this is a personal fight for him. He sounds off his point of view quite often, announcing that the Garganites are the enemy and they must be destroyed. Winning the battle is his only goal, his personal goal. So from his point of view, he is a hero, and that's what makes him an excellent challenge. Now the empathy. The empathy wavers a little bit here between the characters, but the movie really wants you to root for this boy by the name of Alan. However, Alan is not he's not that great of a character. He's a little bit well, he's not perfect. In the beginning, we learn that he's kicked out of several schools for doing some graffiti, and now his parents are really having a hard time trusting him. No matter what happened to him in the past, he's actually trying to do the right thing at the point in time the movie begins. And so we have a case of a guy who is trying to do the right thing, but he just has bad luck. Like, for instance, accidentally setting off and activating the commando elite. But Alan actually makes friends with the Garganite leader, Archer. And Archer is extremely likable immediately. But other than his position as being pronounced the leader, he does absolutely nothing. When the battle goes on, he actually hides. So he's not the hero in the film, except for one thing: he does give great monologues of exposition. He does have the command of respect in his voice. You know, Alan is the one that's really set up to be the hero, along with winning the prize at the end of the film of the neighbor's daughter, Christy Fimple. Which, you know, it's a trope in a lot of movies. Hey, this was the 90s. They were still learning. But, you know, Christy is a likable girl, but we know very little about her throughout the entire film. She's just sort of like the sidekick or the person to save in the film. But one thing we know for sure is that she has really bad taste in guys and fills her room with dolls that she hates and enjoys destroying the Commando Elite dolls as a way to let go of a little repression, maybe, of being the perfect little girl that her parents want her to be. So, the technical aspects of the film. The technical aspects are one of the strongest elements in the film. The character designs are pretty cool looking, in my opinion, and I loved how intimidating they looked. And when I first saw them, I just couldn't wait to see the adventures that they would have. I mean, the poster alone is pretty cool, I have to say. So with the Commando Elite Chip and Archer side by side, it's just an incredible image. An animated TV show would have been great for these guys. So yeah, I love the design of the characters. Now, the Commando Elite were strongly influenced by the G.I. Joe toy franchise by Hasbro. Stan Winston and his special effects crew met with Hasbro to get a better understanding of how their toys worked. And you really get the sense of that in the film, because you can see that they are following the rules of what the dolls are supposed to move like. And it looks great. The Garganites were strongly influenced by the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe toy franchise by Mattel. You know, that's not the only connection to that franchise, but Frank Langella voices the character Archer in this movie, and he also played the role of Skeletor in the movie The Masters of the Universe, released in 1987, which I've reviewed on this channel. I think this is where the character design was really done well in demonstrating the oddity of the Garganites as aliens, while keeping the whimsy of being a toy. Kind of like something kids would like to play with. And Joe Dante said this. He said, "We were planning to use a lot of Stan Winston's puppets he made, and made some very elaborate puppets that would do a lot of things. But in practice, we found it much simpler and cheaper to let the CGI people do the work after we shot the scenes. So I would say it's 1/3 puppetry and the rest CGI, even though the original idea was to do mostly puppetry." That was his direct quote. Now, learning that, it seems to me that maybe it should have been flipped to like maybe 2/3 puppetry and maybe 1/3 CGI, because it's almost there. It was, the CGI was almost there, but it just didn't exactly work to the point where it looked real. In today's age, it really doesn't hold up visually. And this was about the time that CGI was becoming something that filmmakers were using in abundance, even though the technology wasn't quite perfected yet. And you know, I think in 1998 that really didn't matter because everybody was using CGI for everything, and we thought it was so cool that it even existed. So although it can be fun, it didn't always look as good as the practical effects. But what I must commend the film on is the editing of the different types of special effects together. I thought that was done very well. Now, let's talk to one of my favorite features of this film is the vehicles that the Commando Elite construct. Especially the ones that they use to attack and chase Alan and Christy. I love them so much. They were heavily influenced by the vehicles from the Mad Max movies, and I just loved how creative they looked and quite menacing at times. They did a fantastic job on that. And the music was okay for me. I think it's got a lot of popular songs for 1998, and they were great for that time. So it's a great timepiece, if anything. I rather like something more cinematic than pop, just throwing in a pop song. But I think the whole effort of this movie was to relate it to pop culture in a big way. Now the performances. I really enjoyed the performances. Gregory Smith was very good as Alan Abernathy, doing all that he could with what was given to him to bring a sense of urgency to his character. Tommy Lee Jones, I feel, really owns this film with his voice acting for Chip Hazard. It's comedic and it's dry humor. It's classic Tommy, working well in the embodiment of the leader of the Commando Elite. His performance was just so charismatic and dynamic. It almost sounds like he's having fun doing this. I mean, I could be mistaken, but he really sinks his teeth into every scene that Chip is in. And it was the glue, really, that kept me watching. Frank Langella was amazing as the voice of Archer, capturing the gentle manner of his character. It's just always a pleasure to hear his rich, riveting, and awe-inspiring baritone voice. I thought that David Cross and Jay Moore were really kind of an excellent yin and yang pairing of comedic styles together. I just like their chemistry together. Dennis Leary is in this, and he kind of does his Dennis Leary thing, with a rant, and of course it's always hilarious. Joe Dante seems to always love casting Dick Miller in his movies, and he's just a great actor, a great character actor, and it's a lot of fun to see him in this. We have Phil Hartman in this, who plays Phil Thimble, and his usual caricature persona, offering a lot of wacky comedy to the film. Really wacky comedy. Now, unfortunately, film was killed shortly after the production wrapped, and a short statement on the credits said that the film was dedicated to him. And the best part of the film. Now, not every joke made me laugh, but I enjoyed the laughs that I did have. I felt the comedy was funny to me. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I just had fun with the jokes and the quibs and all that stuff. And one thing about this film, it is a highly action-packed film. Especially, not so much the beginning, but the middle and end. I enjoyed all that, like Voltron Power Rangers style connection to the tech vehicles that makes like one big vehicle that the Commando Elite created for their attack. In fact, I just loved all the fantastic vehicles, as I said before, that they had invented. I loved all the explosions, of course, and all of the action, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, Chip Hazard really makes this film for me by being such a dynamic character. Now, the ending, I was very happy with the ending at first, but it's an unfinished story. It leaves a lot of weird questions like what will happen to the Gargonites in the wilderness, and what will happen to those rebels in South America that the owner of Heartland Place Systems will give those, defective toys to. After a while, are there going to be Gargonite toys in jungles all over the world believing that it's Gargon? It's very, very interesting. My wish list. I really wish that the film had less characters to keep our focus on why the good guys should win. The protagonists are so lackluster and scattered. I was pretty much rooting for the Commando Elite all along. Does that make me a bad person? I really wish that the final battle scene with Chip Hazard and Archer was more exciting. I know that Archer is not a fighter in the film, but he is a leader, and he should be equipped to fight for them. And it would really be cool to have this really powerful character be sweet and peaceful, but actually have that authority to defend himself. The film and the marketing really builds up this incredible rivalry between Archer and Chip. Sort of like the battle between two great titans. And, that's what I was really looking for. And I was so disappointed. And I think that's a complaint of a lot of people who watch this film, that should have been more epic. The enjoyment. The film really got off to a rocky start upon release because many of the people who saw the trailer and the poster thought that the film would be great for little kids, especially boys. It didn't make matters any better when Burger King agreed to market the film with its kids' meals before it even received its rating of a PG-13. Needless to say, the film was met with mixed reviews due to the confusion of mixing the genres of toys, action, and some mature themes. According to Joe Dante, he was brought in to give the film an edgy appeal and duplicate his success with Gremlins. But once the film's sponsors got involved, he was asked to make a more kiddie movie, and this was probably done to fall in line with a toy line. Cha-ching! And that pretty much explains why this film seems odd of a fit for kids. Now, how do you make a film like Gremlins into a kiddie movie without it destroying everything that makes it so good? And I find it ironic that there's a scene in the movie that mirrors real life when the Garganite toys were intended to be friendly creatures and the toy company changes them to be the monsters for the Commando Elite to destroy, twisting the origins for sales. Now, Burger King was clearly not a good match for small soldiers due to their intention to appeal to a very young audience. But I think that a brand like Home Depot would have been a more appropriate sponsor, for the film, since the characters would be using home garage tools. I mean, don't you agree? I mean, it seems like that would have made more sense. And maybe they didn't have a good idea of what they were going to do before they made the deal. Now, a heavily edited version of the film made its way to TV viewings over the years, garnering a small fan base. And that was how I was exposed to the film and loved it ever since my first viewing. I didn't realize that this film was so disliked by so many people and made fun of relentlessly on the internet. It kind of makes me sad that some people can't see what I see in this movie. However, I know that in the mix there are a few of us out there that like the film because I saw the videos of reviews and I saw some of the comments that people left for some of the skating reviews, and I know that there are fans out there. So to my fellow retro nerd people out there who love the weirdness of this toy action film with saucy quibs, bellowing explosions, and wanton destruction. In spite of its problems, I love the idea behind the story of a batch of army toys being brought to life and gone rogue. I mean, it's a great idea with so much potential, and hopefully one day someone will remake this movie and make it amazing. And even though the film is not for kids and not quite really for grown-ups either, I think that this film was made for me, the grown-up with a rather active inner child. My rating is an 8.3. That sums up my review. I hoped you liked it. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.